Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared.
Hello, I am your host today, and we don't have an intro track anymore.
No, the thing we record on changed. It's a new company. It lost our thing somehow.
Fabulous. The internet has been killing it. It's not become a horrible hellscape where you can't find anything or do anything.
Yeah, AI is definitely improving the quality of our lives.
Oh my God. And it is not a speculative bubble that we all, in a very Minsky-ass fashion, are going to have to bail out using public funds. That's not gonna happen. We're not in a Minsky moment. And I'm not even like pro. I think Minsky is a lot of shit, but he is the Minsky thing, which we talked about on Patreon.
Yes.
That the financial bubbles happen with or are abetted by confidence that the lender of last resort, the Fed, will bail out financial institutions when they get in too deep.
Right. Also, I feel like we're not checking the sound now on the new setup, but you might have to get closer to the microphone.
Oh,
We should be equal distance.
Okay, I don't
touch it. That's good for somebody's ears.
I don't fucking know.
This is good. I think this is good. I think we're good.
If you can't tell, I'm a natural of podcasting. This is what I was born to do.
Dear listeners, go easy.
Yeah.
Set up. We're giving you our best. It's been a hard 2 months.
Yeah, this has been. And so, Madeline, do you want to catch us up on where we were in talking about Armenia?
Okay. So this is part 2 of our episode series on the Armenian genocide. And it has been so long since part 1. My memory is so shot. Basically, political turmoil, Ottoman Empire, chaos, confusion, fighting breaks out, and the Armenians are getting fucked with.
Okay, so we ended by talking about the Hamidian massacres, which are named for Abdul Hamid II, who was Sultan of the Ottoman. He was not the last. There was a kind of puppet sultan after him, but the second to last Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. And they were carried out by a combination of Kurdish tribemen and Turkish irregulars, that is sort of like, kind of informal militias. We talked a fair bit about economic and social political conditions in the late Ottoman Empire, right? Do you remember this?
I think I do. And I remember that there was some sort of, okay, I'm trying to piece this together because this is not a topic I was familiar with before this episode at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
real Fresno girl over here.
I'm sorry. Okay. So there was something about how it was vaguely nomadic, like people were having to move around a bunch for reasons because there was something to do with access to jobs and stability.
Well, so what we learned was that sort of as a socio-political entity, both within and outside of the Armenian or outside of the Ottoman state, Armenians took up a position as a merchant class with often more connections to European capital than Arab, Turkic, or Kurdish, or the Arab, Turkic, or Kurdish population.
I think I remember this, but then also, so they had more economic power, but less political power, right? That was the trade-off that was happening there.
And the Ottoman state was multi-ethnic. As we'll see today, only about 40% of the Ottoman state was Turkic ethnically, with the rest being Greek, Assyrian, Armenian, Kurdish, Arab, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Right.
This is starting to come back to me now.
The other thing on the economic side, and I don't think I mentioned this last time, but it is worth noting. And I've been reading a book about the financial situation in Russia prior to the revolution. And the point is made that the two states with the biggest debt to European powers were late Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire.
Oh, that is actually very, very interesting to consider.
And it was at a point where the European powers, especially Great Britain, had set up a separate institution to administer the debt in the Ottoman Empire, which is why Abdul Hamid suspended the constitution.
Got it.
Okay. So we're kind of in the middle of the massacres. And in the meantime, so we are in 1896 here. Okay.
Got it.
So this is June 3rd to 11th. Armenians in Van began organizing to defend their city because they had heard of massacres elsewhere.
And these were kind of like roving gangs of militants, right?
Yeah, and it was a lot of Kurdish tribesmen who often were under normal non-massacre conditions, were extorting Armenian peasants in the eastern part of Anatolia, who when they the way that this usually worked was the Kurdish tribesmen along with Turkish irregulars would hear of Armenians arming themselves in self-defense, and then they would preemptively just burn down. Right.
Wow.
The other thing, I forgot to mention, just to catch everyone up, there were a few political parties that formed, often of immigrants in Europe and Russia. So that's the Dashnuks, who tended to be more moderate, democratic, socialist type, still nationalist, but willing to work within the framework of the Ottoman state, and the Hunchuks, who tended to be more militant.
Okay.
Okay? Do you remember all of this from last time?
No, not at all. So this is a great recap. Parts of it are coming back to me, but I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Those people. So this is good. The recaps are helpful.
Also, the Ottoman state was falling apart. Egypt was taken over by, I believe, Great Britain. Parts of Algeria were taken over by France. Parts of the Ottoman state were just being dismantled by European powers at the time.
I definitely remember.
Yeah.
So we were in full chaos.
So we're in Van, and the Armenians are arming themselves to defend their city. And these were members of the revolutionary Armenian party, specifically the Dashnaks, the Hanchaks, and the Armenicans, who don't really play much of a part, but they're there. They're there. After several days of siege, the British consulate negotiated a ceasefire, and the Armenian combatants agreed to resettle in Persia. As they were moving towards the Persian borders, they were set upon by a group made up of local Kurds as well as Turkish soldiers, and were massacred by the thousands. So the violence continued across the eastern portion of the Ottoman Empire. One British diplomat reported the following from Marsavan. At 7 o'clock Turkish, about noon, a Turk rushed into Pasha Jami Mosque, shouting that the Armenian committee was advancing to attack. We're going to use some outdated terminology because this is a British guy in 1896.
You're going to say slurs.
I'm going to say slurs.
Oh,
This is what
everybody.
I'm
going to say slurs.
I feel like if anyone is a return listener, everyone knows that the thing that I've been trying to do for so long is say slurs
and become a Republican and body shame people.
Yes,
all in tandem. You're embracing the push towards fascism. You're like, why not me?
I mean, there are a lot of reasons to do with the kind of person I am. Why not me? But one can dream. So the Musulmans, that's
is that a slur?
I don't think it's a slur, but I don't think it's a word that Muslims would be stoked upon hearing. These days, rushed from the mosques, and at the same time, just as if a signal had been given, the villagers swarmed into the town from the surrounding country, and the whole mass bore down upon the marketplace with shouts of "kill the kafir" or "loot his goods." This means
that's also a slur, isn't it?
I believe for
with the K word.
Yeah,
no, we're not supposed to say that. Yeah, that's a slur.
Okay, well, here we are.
Okay. Yeah, you said maybe two slurs.
I'm slurring it up. Okay. The soldiers joined in the attack and assassinated the mob and assisted the mob to dispatch the Armenians. The whole market was pillaged, and with the exception of 3 shops belonging to Grigorias, the only Greeks in the market, which were protected by the troops, men and women were killed like sheep after refusing to accept the Mohammedan faith, which was offered as their only alternative. The doors of shops were broken in, the inmates murdered, and the wares dragged out and carried off. By the end of the massacres, estimates of deaths range from 80 to 300,000.
What?
Obviously,
whenever you get massacre numbers, it's always this huge range like this, and it is so impossible to figure out.
Okay, so I have an explanation for that, which is that Armenians, especially the Armenian diaspora community, tends to be on the higher side.
Of course.
Right. Whereas Turkish accounts tend to be on the lower side.
80 people died.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
I understand this range occurs naturally, but there has to be, I mean, this is such a huge range,
mhm.
80 to 300,000.
So this is 80,000, not 80 people.
Oh, okay. I literally thought it was 80.
No, you were looking at my notes,
I'm
and
looking
I
at your
just,
notes. Yeah, no. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like 80 people.
yeah,
But, um, but you know, that is some Cultural Revolution numbers.
yeah,
It's like 12 people died. It was horrible. And then the West is like 80 million people died.
yeah.
They
Well,
murdered
there are
everyone in the
10
world
million victims.
of, of the Cultural Revolution.
I was just of communism.
Of communism. No,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
100 million.
Oh, are we at 100 million?
Yeah, if the Black People Communist thing, there were 100 million people
Oh
against
boy.
that, which is interesting when you consider that the Cultural Revolution killed
Hmm.
800 million people,
Hmm.
a billion people, 8 billion. Everybody in the world was killed in the Cultural Revolution. They had
I
to
mean,
make a
that
new world.
is one way to form a classless society.
Just kill everyone. Kill them all. Yeah.
You know, we're all equal in the grave.
Okay, so 80,000 to 300,000 people is the estimate here.
And generally speaking, people distinguish the Hamidian massacres from the later Adana massacre, which we'll talk about in a minute, and from the genocide because they see Abdul Hamid, who
Wait, so these numbers don't even count on the genocide.
no, this is just
These are just pre-genocide massacres.
these are pre-genocide
This
massacres.
is insane. 80,000 people is huge. For
Mhm.
reference, when we were talking about our episode in Ukraine, Stepan Bandera called in the Nazis. They came to Poland. The OUMB killed 100,000 people
Yeah.
during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So 80,000 being the low end of these massacres is absolutely huge.
Yeah. The difference scholars tend to say is that Abdul Hamid II's sort of motivation for the massacres was not ethnic cleansing, but was disciplinary, because the Dashnak and Hanchak parties represented a threat to his autocracy. And Abdul Hamid, remember, he was in the process of suspending the constitution because, like, for reasons like this is not to justify any of this, but right, like he was attempting to like shore up a state that was rapidly falling apart, and Armenians represented to him a threat to that project.
Right.
Okay.
So this is why it's not classified as genocide.
It's classified as massacres.
Right. Okay.
So a contemporaneous New York Times report reads as follows. And Madeline, do you want to read that quote?
Now let's take a look.
It starts right there.
50,000 children made orphans by the Turkish massacres is the official estimate by the State Department. The British government, should I keep going? Or
Here, I'll keep going from here. So the British government or its ambassador at Constantinople has initiated a movement leading towards the settlement of a number of widows and their children on the island of Cyprus, more particularly at present those within the province of Erzurum, who number, let's see, it's in Erzincan and Bayburt, 2,049 who are without means. In Erzurum, there are 180 widows with 700 children.
Whoa.
In Erzincan, 100 widows with 450 children. And at Bayburt, 119 widows with 500 children. And it's worth noting, and this becomes kind of like a symbol, like this is one of the first places where the Red Cross becomes kind of a thing. It had been founded in 1863, but in 1896, Clara Barton led a team to the Anatolia province to provide relief. Barton's missionaries were initially met with resistance from Abdul Hamid's government. In her recollection of the incident, she writes, "Unfortunately, the suspicions of the Turkish government had fallen upon the resident missionaries, both English and American, as favoring the views of the efforts of its anarchic population, or the Young Turks," about more whom in a second, as they were designated. This had the effect of placing the missionaries in danger, confining them strictly to their own quarters, preventing all communication and receiving any funds sent from abroad. And so at this point, we actually do need to talk about the Young Turks, because this is where do you know anything about the Young Turks?
No, actually, I just know that there was like some popular social media group that called themselves the Young Turks.
Oh, yeah, that was
in reference to this, but I'm not really familiar with them, so I don't even have a reference point for it.
So a few years in the future, by the outbreak of World War I, only about 40% of the population, as I mentioned, was ethnically Turkish. The rest of the population was Greek, Arabic, Circassian, which is like Dagestani,
Oh, okay.
an Armenian. We talked last time about the Hanchaks and the Dashnuks, the two Armenian nationalist groups. Recall that the Hanchaks were more militant and the Dashnuks tended to advocate for independence and national identity within a sort of multi-ethnic, cosmopolitan Ottoman state. But the Hamidian government was basically under siege by this point by all of these nationalist groups who espoused some sort of modern liberal state. There were Arab rebellions going on. There were Greek rebellions going on. It was, Greece had won independence, but there were still a lot of Greeks living predominantly along the Aegean coast. And so it was very much the case that it was like, Abdul Hamid was like, oh, anyone who is any kind of nationalist can fuck right off at this point.
Because it was a threat to the empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, there were these Bulgarian anarchists called the Boatmen of Thessalonica who planned a series of largely unsuccessful bombings. Generally speaking, what would happen is they would blow themselves up.
Wow, because I was going to say, if I was an anarchist, this is kind of a cool vibe to get into. Like the name, the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it was...
Interesting. You could really play with that aesthetically.
There was...
sailor outfits.
Absolutely, sure. There was some poem that is essentially like you were going to take a boat to paradise or some shit like that they named themselves after. So they did manage to blow up a French ship in an Ottoman port, which,
they did a thing.
They did a thing. The Kurds, meanwhile, had also started their own series of uprisings starting in the 1870s. And remember, many Kurds had participated in the massacre of Armenians and had participated in the Hamidi regiments that carried out the massacres. But more or less, everyone in the late Ottoman Empire is catching the spirit of nationalism. We are fully in the age of nationalism. And so no one more so than ethnic Turks. Abdul Hamid, meanwhile, was turning towards kind of a pan-Islamicism as a way of like stitching together some kind of like Ottoman identity that could like obviously not cross all boundaries because the Greeks, the Assyrians, and the Armenians were all Christian, but to sort of stitch together some kind of multi-ethnic identity. But there were all of these thinkers, including this guy Kamel, about more of whom later, who were beginning to come up with an idea of pan-Turkism, which we talked about.
Yes.
Can you explain what pan-Turkism is?
It's just a confederacy of Turkish identity.
Yeah, and but there's like a sort of mythological nationalism to it. We talked about this.
That they built. I totally forgot about that element.
We talked about this in the Uyghur episode.
Yes.
And it's basically this sort of like the idea that the Turkic people represent like a distinct ethnicity that expands from parts of like rural northwestern China through the Caucasus to Finland.
It's over 7 countries.
Yeah.
And they want to build, still to this day, when we talk about the East Turkestan Islamic movement, these are the supposed independence movement of Xinjiang. It's not just in Xinjiang, China, that these people are claiming that they are oppressed. They are claiming that they want to form an ethno-state that spans 7 existing countries.
Mm-hmm. So that's like...
And it's a very small amount of people today. Today, it's like 200 guys holding it down or something.
Which is... like, I mean, I feel like the modern Turkish government is like, let's call it positively ambivalent.
I think they've had problems with the ETIM because it's ISIS affiliated.
No, I mean, they've had but they're not like, put it this way, the denials of the Armenian genocide have a lot to do with the founding myths about the Turkish state, which have a lot to do with a kind of like pan-Turkish nationalist mythology.
Right. And Turkey also, it's not just the Armenians that they've been bad to.
They have been bad to the Kurds. Like in the modern period, the Kurds have kind of ironically just suffered the same fate as the Armenians before them. So in 1878, Abdul Hamid had dissolved the parliament, at which point political reformers had attempted to extend constitutional reforms of the Tanzimat era, and they're driven underground. In 1889, the Congress for the Union and Progress held its first conference at a vineyard outside of Constantinople, and they became the largest faction within a growing Young Turk movement. So the Young Turk movement comprised people who were sort of like liberal constitutionalists as well as nationalists. And this movement was to oust Abdul Hamid. Their first attempt to overthrow Abdul Hamid government happened in August of 1896, right as the massacres were ending, when Camille Pasha and other members of the Young Turk movement attempted to coup the Sultan, but it was uncovered very quickly, and they were all jailed or exiled. Okay? So the Young Turk movement was really fractured ideologically. It involved everything from like liberal reformers and socialists to pan-Turkish thinkers. As Grigor Suni writes, the first intellectual opponents of the regime were more motivated by a multinational society within the framework of an imperial state. He continues, the Young Turk opposition to Abdul Hamid was not tightly bound by a single ideology. Its ranks included revolutionaries and gradualists, religious critics and militant secularists, constitutionalist opponents of autocracy, and even non-Muslim federalists. Turn of the century Turkish revolutionaries included some who later led the Kemalist movement, but they grew out of an intellectual milieu that exalted science, rejected religion, and borrowed freely from Western ideology. And so the Kemalist thing is the tendency towards a more ethnic nationalist identification. And this is named after Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. And it's tended to predominate, at least in terms of political power, as we'll see, if not in terms of numbers. So during the massacre of the 1890s, Ahmed Riza, one of the founders of the CUP, met with the Armenian immigrants living in Paris and expressed dismay at the violence. So at first, there's this tendency among the Young Turk movement to look to the various national struggles, and especially the Armenian national struggle, as kind of commensurate with the movement to replace Abdul Hamid's government with a constitutional one. Right. And this is important because, spoiler alert, the Young Turk movement is largely responsible for the Armenian genocide. So at the first Congress of the Ottoman opposition in 1902, Riza and other members of the
What?
No, I just love the, like, Madeline, you can eat your airhead.
They're loud in the microphone. The bag is so bag sounding.
Okay, they're airheads.
They're airheaded dreams. I just didn't want to make like a lot of noise, so I'm trying to be gentle and delicate, but I also haven't eaten today.
Yeah. So at the first Congress of the Ottoman opposition in 1902, Riza and other members of the CUP rejected the aims of the Armenian representatives, asking for foreign intervention and special arrangements for the eastern provinces of Anatolia, where the majority of Armenians live. So basically, Riza and the CUP is like, we love the Armenian struggle. Keep struggling. You cannot be an independence with them.
Okay.
Like,
all right. Love it in theory.
Like, we
off, babes. Che Guevara on a t-shirt.
This is
actually do the thing though.
Well, this is like a enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation where they're like looking at the Armenian like Dashnaks and Hanchaks, and they're like, I mean, you guys are kind of making things hard for the Abdul Hamid regime, so keep going.
Yeah.
But there's like this open question that, well, it gets answered by deeds rather than anything else of what to do about Armenians. So Prince Sabahaddin, who was representative of the Liberal Coalition and who was more conciliatory, like at one point he asked something to the effect of like, what country has ever allowed for a party calling itself revolutionary?
Fair question. Fair question.
So when the liberal majority at the conference voted in favor of a resolution calling on the great powers in Europe to uphold the various provisions of the treaties that were protecting Armenians, the CU representatives split from the conference, and the conference ended in disaster. The Armenian representatives passed a separate resolution stating that they would continue to advocate and commit terror campaigns against the Abdul Hamid regime while acknowledging the, quote, unity and organic existence of Turkey. So everyone's kind of like confused about what the fuck is going on.
Okay.
Right. Even as the liberal majority of the conference could not conceive of Armenia as a separate state, one representative wrote, "I recognize you, the Armenians, not as an independent element, but as Ottomans. You have rights as Ottomans. You do not have rights to bargain with us and make offers as if you were a state." So, and by the way, this is all happening in Paris.
Right.
This is so like they're like these are all exile groups, but they're sort of like all pissed. It should also be mentioned that oh gosh, what's his name? The liberal guy was the nephew of Abdul Hamid. The crap, where's his name?
The liberal guy, these negotiations?
Yeah.
Oh.
So all of these
What?
Yeah, so all of these people are like there's a point at which, and we'll talk about this, like where when the CUP eventually comes to power, they replace Abdul Hamid with his brother.
Oh. Okay.
But they're like, just sit there. We're gonna do everything. You just have to sit there.
They're like, new management, same look.
Yeah. So even if the liberals at the conference represented the majority of people, they were outflanked by Turkish nationalists representing the CUP and the movement as a whole. The liberals were also kind of pissed about the Armenian terror campaigns. Sabahattin, that's the nephew.
Okay.
Wrote, our Armenian compatriots, instead of pursuing the propaganda of the deed, i.e. terrorism, would be acting in a way much more favorable to their interests if they pursued a propaganda of ideas in Turkish circles.
Okay.
So in general, the vibe is like, don't be an independence movement. An appeal written by the Young Turk Central Committee sums up the attitude of the right-wing movement. Let it be known that it would be funny if 400 million Muslims would come to be afraid of a handful of Armenians spread all over the world. We do not want to know you, Armenian revolutionaries. For this reason, from now on, we will consider a revolutionary every Armenian male from 15 to 70 years old, and each time you undertake anything hostile towards us, we will ruthlessly exterminate you all over the world.
Oh, shit.
And so...
Whoa, okay.
They're not talking about nothing, because remember, especially the Hunchaks were like pretty good at doing terrorism.
Right.
And terrorism, like this was, put it this way, this was pre 9/11 when terrorism still had the era of like, I'm Boris Ivankov and I have like a cool mustache.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild though, because it really shows you how consistent the terminology is used for every situation that's similar, like from era to era, from issue to issue. It's that we're afraid of you, we're demonizing you, and now every single man between the ages of 50 to 70, we're just treating as a combatant, and we're prematurely killing you. It's like, that could have been Israel saying that about Palestine. That could have been the United States saying that about Vietnam, or the French saying that about Vietnam. I mean, it could be any number of things. It's just very, very interesting. White America saying that about Black America today.
I mean, absolutely. It is and I think this is, this is one of the legacies of nationalism. And nationalism, remember, the Armenians are also nationalists at this point, right? Because like nationalism doesn't represent inherently at this point in history like violent ethnic nationalist repression of other people. It represents pride in your like cultural heritage and a desire to have a state that represents that. Like,
well, and you understand why. When somebody's telling you we can't negotiate with you, you don't have a state.
Yeah.
Why do you stand here like you represent anything? You don't represent anything. You're just some guy.
Yeah. And they're not wrong. That like the Armenians are like pretty fucking good at terrorism. That's where like especially the Hanchak, like they were really good at terrorism. So members of the Hanchak party they did try to bomb. They failed, but they tried to bomb the Sultan's carriage as he was leaving a mosque, and so he like,
well, you gotta try.
You gotta try.
You gotta put the attempt in.
So on the other hand, a bunch of disgruntled Turkish military officers within the Young Turk movement began their own terror campaign under the auspices of Talat Bey, who it's Talat Pasha once he sort of comes to power. But and he is a telegraph operator from Solnika who has like, he'd been arrested once for sending letters that was like coded messages in favor of like a revolutionary Turkish movement. At this point, he formed the Ottoman Liberty Society with a number of disgruntled military officers, and together they began forming irregular armed bands. And just to sum up where we are, the Young Turk movement, which after 1902 fused its various factions under the control of the CUP, who maybe had fewer members, but were more politically powerful, and also had more sort of members in like rural areas, right? Like they tended to be more popular among like rural old Turks or rural Ottomans. So has a really ambivalent relationship to the Armenian questions. Liberals are advocating for a certain amount of autonomy for Armenians within the Turkish state. Reactionaries, meanwhile, are looking with suspicion on the Armenians. Everyone agrees that the goal of the movement, besides ousting Abdul Hamid, is to preserve the territorial integrity of the Ottoman state.
So no independence movements.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right. And also the Ottoman state is just falling apart. And they're in massive debt. Bank Ottoman is run by the British. The British are running a separate credit agency to try to get their money back. Which is also, remember we talked about Gladstone, the British MP who'd come out of retirement to decry the Hamidian massacres last time.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about the British is like, they are also not in favor of the sort of, Balkanization, so to speak, of the Ottoman state because they want their money back.
Right.
That
makes sense.
So while they will sort of gesture at helping the Armenians, any sort of Armenian independence movement, they're going to be like, can't help you there.
Right. Nobody's allowed to cut and run. We need you all here together so we can make money back off you. Yes, that makes sense. It's not ethical, but it makes sense from an economic motivation.
Yeah. And so in 1908, there is a Macedonian fight for independence, and this starts to intensify, and both Abdul Hamid and the Young Turks begin to become suspicious that either the Russians or the British are conspiring to separate Macedonia from the empire. The Young Turk movement began to organize a series of military coups and demonstration, writing to the Sultan that if he did not reinstate the constitution and hold elections, the Ottoman state would fall apart. In June, Great Britain and Russia held a conference in Revel in which they agreed to institute a series of reforms in Macedonia with the eventual goal of separating Macedonia from the Ottoman Empire. On July 3rd, a Turkish military unit under Lieutenant Niazi rose up in rebellion. A few days later, another military unit rebelled. By July 23rd, most of the Turkish military was in open revolt against the Sultan. And by the end of the month, the Sultan capitulated, restoring the constitution and holding elections for a newly reinstated parliament. As one scholar put it, rather than a mass movement, the revolution was a well-planned military coup conceived and executed in Macedonia by a conspiratorial organization whose leadership harbored a quintessentially conservative aim to seize control of the empire and save it from collapse. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Abdul Hamid is technically still in power.
I was going to say, they didn't get rid of him. They just want to bring in a new parliament.
Yeah. So everyone, including the Armenians, they're pumped because they're like, we're going to get our constitution back. We're going to get like Tanzimat-style reforms, which means more autonomy for the Malays, which means, the Armenian National Congress is able to operate more freely, which means that the Armenian Church under the Patriarchate in Constantinople is able to operate. Like, they're stoked. They think it's going to go great. And for the first few months, everything looks like it might actually work out for Armenia. The Russian consul in Bitlis wrote to the Tsar that the last few months, due to the new government policy, the Kurds have been unrecognizable. They have stopped looting and killing the Armenian Bilyets, something which is difficult to expect from them.
I just love like the racism just everywhere.
No, I mean, it's right. Like, how do I put this? Right. That's a racist way of talking.
Yeah.
Right. It is true that Kurdish tribesmen, for reasons of their own vulnerability within the Ottoman Empire, were attacking Armenians.
Right.
Like, it's like you have to separate like the facts from how people talk about
that's why I was like, it's just racism everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just people doing racism at each other. It's like when Bakunin and Marx used to yell racial slurs at one another.
That's so sick.
Yeah, that was how they fought. They would just yell racial slurs at each other. Yeah.
new government, like, almost immediately, he starts dismissing Hamidian officials in Anatolia and replacing them with officials loyal to the new regime, which had the effect of stopping a lot of the extortions and killings for a moment.
Okay, so for a minute,
Yeah,
Armenians are getting reprieve. Got it.
but they're almost immediately facing the same challenges as the old regime, which is massive debt and the empire falling apart because of national struggles on the borders, right? Like, so one of the main goals of the Young Turk movement was the preservation of Ottoman territorial integrity.
Oops, sorry.
Within months of that, hold on, I looked at Madeline's
Oh,
phone.
sorry.
No, I
Usually start work, take my lunch break long so we can do this.
I
We care about you, the listener. We're sorry.
I lose my place without your help, so this is not on you. This is on my dumb ass.
Should we sing a song? We look like.
Yeah.
Should I sing?
Where were the new government? So within months of the revolution or coup, depending on how, like, in Turkey, the Young Turk stuff is regarded as this is a legitimate revolution. A lot of scholars outside of Turkey are like, this was a military coup.
Okay, this is similar to Ukraine when they talk about we had a revolution at Maidan, and from the outside everyone's like, bro, you got cooed, and then that
but
the brain is like, we got cooed.
They got
Depends on who's winning.
Cooed by a bunch of, like, the Young Turk movement operating out of Macedonia under Talat, who were attempting, like, one of their goals was the restoration of the constitution. The other goal was, like, Abdul Hamid was fucking up their country, right? Like, just like he was like a bad leader to them. And as Surak Hanioglu, the scholar who I quoted earlier, said, it was a conservative reactionary movement. So within months of the revolution, Austro-Hungary annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina in October of 1908. So there goes one more state from the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, Armenians in Constantinople ousted their own patriarch, Armenian, who had been really loyal to Abdul Hamid, and had reinstalled Mateos Ismailian, who'd been hostile to the Hamidian regime. An Armenian newspaper proclaimed that the majority of the nation is in agreement that reforming the condition of Armenians is dependent upon the reform of Turkey. So they're like, we are going to work with the government. This is going to rock. We're going to get like our own sort of state within a state. The Dashnaks, meanwhile, dissolved their armed defense bands, which they had formed during the Hamidian massacres, to give credibility to the Armenian intention to operate within the bounds of the new government. I am going to say right now that was a mistake. When the first election was held in December of 1908, it wasn't the liberal wing of the Young Turks under Prince Sabahaddin that benefited. In fact, the conservatives of the CUP took 160 out of 288 seats in parliament.
Whoa.
That's nothing. Wait till you see when they get 95% of the vote.
Were people surprised by this?
I think
Did people expect it to be a little more balanced at least?
No, I mean, I think, right, like the liberal wing was as like liberals ever. It's like it was the merchant class in cities, right? And then like the countryside was like, actually, we do want like a more, like a stronger hand on the till, so to speak.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's substitute any place.
Yeah. So problems began to show almost immediately. The principal one was that the CUP inherited the economic situation of Abdul Hamid. In the year leading up to the quote-unquote revolution, there had been this severe winter, which had raised the prices of food to levels, which, as one article put it, made the existence of the laboring class very difficult. By March of 1907,
that's a very polite way of saying people were starving to death.
Yeah. By March of 1907, the price of staple foods had doubled. Firewood was up 250%, and the price of charcoal had tripled.
So it's just like freeze to death and starve you.
Yeah.
Wow.
A drought in spring had reduced grain harvests, and moreover, there was a fiscal crisis brought on by foreign debts, which were being called because of the revolution.
Yeah, okay.
Which meant that many officers and civil servants were regularly going unpaid. The CUP under Talat Bey, that's the guy, the old telegraph operator.
Yeah.
sorry, it's hard to keep track of a lot.
No,
of
I like it's helpful to have context. I like
increasingly started to regard appeals to multiculturalism within the empire as anathema to the goal of preserving any kind of territorial sovereignty, given the degree to which the Ottoman Empire was the subject to so many foreign interventions. At a secret party conference held at Salonika in November of 1910, Talat told CUP members, according to the constitution, there is to be perfect equality between Muslims and non-believers. You know and feel yourselves that that is impossible. Both the Sharia and our history stand in the way of such equality. Hundreds of thousands of believers rebel at the thought. However, this is the interesting point. It also runs counter to the feelings of unbelievers. They do not want to become Ottomans. Right. Remember what the Armenians are, or like the Dashnaks and Hunchaks of the Armenians are saying, as well as also remember that the Armenian Patriarchate is suspicious of either of the revolutionary or Armenian parties and is like, dude, we just want to work within the system. It's totally cool. We have our power through the millet system. Right. So the Armenians are like, no, we definitely do. We will form armed bands if you try to massacre us.
Right.
But like, we want to work within the state.
Very reasonable.
In addition, the CUP was like really incompetent at resolving fiscal and economic crises that they had inherited, and they were loath to share power with any other sort of coalition within the government. So one party member told his fellow CUP members, all the heads dreaming of sharing power must be crushed. We have to be harsher than Nero as far as ensuring domestic peace is concerned. What this meant was that the CUP carried out essentially an assassination campaign. For example, the editor of the opposition newspaper, Hassan Fehmi, in April of 1909, the murder pissed everyone off because they were just like, you just killed a journalist, dude.
Never popular.
Yeah.
It is never popular to kill journalists.
Don't kill like, if you are going to do like, let's say it, mass murder campaign, don't kill the journalists.
Don't kill the journalists. I would say Ukraine is in the situation it's in right now because the Ukrainian president in the year 2000 killed a journalist.
Don't kill journalists.
Kill journalists. It's never going to go well. It's going to make all your shit way more complicated later.
Yeah, so everyone's pissed, liberalists, constitutionalists, and the army. And on April 12th, an armed mutiny broke out as crowds marched to restore the Sultan's power. They're like, we want the Sultan. Like,
bring him back. Like, nice experiment, failed. Bring him back.
Obviously, Armenians don't want this because they didn't fare too well under the Sultan. So they end up standing by the CUP. A deputy of the CUP and also an Armenian named Bedros Halajian confronted protesters and defied them to shoot him. So, like, there are Armenian members of the CUP at this point still. Right. He was a member of parliament.
And he's standing from like, shoot me, come on, shoot me. You want? Do people shoot him, David?
No, they don't shoot him.
Oh, okay.
But there is like,
what it called their bluff.
Yeah. So the CUP acted again, this time definitively deposing Abdul Hamid on April 23rd and installing Mehmet V. Is that how you say that? Right there.
Mehmet, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
The old Sultan's brother, but limiting his power so severely, it doesn't really make sense to call him, like, we're not going to be talking about him much.
Got it.
Because he's just
kind of there.
Yeah.
He's a...
In response to the counter-protests, the CUP began executing opposition leaders and pushing through a law which limited individual rights and made conscription, regardless of religion, mandatory. So they're seizing power at this point. So this pissed off a lot of Armenians in Anatolia who, like, remember, their whole principal thing was, like, we want the constitution back. We want the Tazminat system back. Who immediately started rioting. In Adana, this led to new massacres. So essentially what happened is like a microcosm of the Hamidian massacres. The majority of the population in Adana was migrant Muslim and Turkish who had been sort of pushed into the region by sort of like national liberation struggles, like in the Caucasus. So Oh, this population, fearing Armenian nationalist violence, formed brigades who went from house to house, killing Armenians as well as Greeks and Assyrians.
But they had no reason to actually fear Armenian national violence.
Yeah, no reason.
Everybody was just hopped up in these conspiracy paranoid ideas that maybe the Armenians would hurt them, so they better hurt the Armenians first.
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear that I'm understanding this. At no point in any of this history has Armenia ever been, or have the Armenians rather, ever been the aggressors.
I mean, here's the thing. Remember, the Hanchak specifically did carry out like small terrorist attacks. They often also...
Wasn't that also in reaction?
Yeah, it was in reaction.
Being fucked with?
It was
like self-defense.
It was self-defense. Also, the Hanchaks had a tendency to kind of assassinate their other Armenians who they regarded as loyal to the Abdul Hamid regime.
They were just they were their little extremist fringe faction, but also that only started after Armenians had been fucked with so much.
Yeah, and so the sort of emigre political parties formed in response to low-grade massacres, from the 17th to the 19th century that culminated in the Hamidian massacres, which, remember, we talked about 80 to 300,000.
Yes.
80,000.
80,000. Yes. I hate that, if you had said 80 to 300,000 in any other context, it would have understood to be 80,000 to 300,000. But because when these numbers are reported for massacres and whatnot, they are so disparate and huge, it was very plausible that it could have just been 80 people.
Yeah.
I hate that is how ridiculous the reports are on massacres like this. Like in Iran, we're like, okay, maybe 3,000 people died, maybe 100,000 people died, and you're like, what? This is crazy.
Don't get me started about Iran. We are not talking about that today.
No, we're not. But we do have an episode, if you guys are interested, called "And Iran So Far Away."
So around 18,000 Armenians died in this massacre.
This is why these poor Armenians. They did not get a break.
The death total overall is estimated to be between 20 and 30,000, but Assyrians died, Greeks died. So
and they're just literally going door to door. Just you, killing you. You seem Armenian, out.
Yeah. One of the things that we will talk about once we get to the actual Armenian genocide, which I think will be probably on Sunday.
Okay.
But is that to this day, well, it's people are dying in their very old age in Turkey, and it is being discovered that they were Armenians who had gone into hiding.
Wow.
Right. And had converted to Islam, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers.
Right.
In order to escape the genocide.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So Rose Lampert, who was an American missionary who witnessed the massacre, wrote in her memoir, "Space will not permit me to write in detail about the many who were crucified, thrown into the river, killed with swords and axes, burned by the thousands in churches or in their homes, or of the many who were tortured and killed in such hideous and awful ways that dare not be repeated." It's also in her writing that we see the first use of the word Holocaust to describe mass murder. So,
and also the Armenians are Christians.
The Armenians are Christian. I think we covered this in the first episode. The Armenians make claim as the first
That's right. Right. The special type of Christianity.
Yeah, which is if you are going to become one of those right-wing people who goes re-Christian in 2026, join the Armenian church. Well, don't. They don't want you. But
that would be what you would do if you were
right. If you wanted to go back to the oldest Christianity, remember they were the ones who have the sort of apocryphal story that Armenians had invited Jesus to come stay with them to escape persecution.
Oh,
which is again when they're coming up with their sort of semi-myth accounts of themselves.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, it's all starting back. Yeah.
So when court-martials were held to determine responsibility, it was claimed that the Armenians had risen up in rebellion. The British consul, Doughty Wiley's testimony gives a flavor of the proceeding. Every Turk in the town is fully persuaded that the Armenians set light to their own houses, with, I suppose, the idea of bringing about foreign interference.
Wow.
So Armenians defended themselves by claiming reasonably enough that they had only risen up in defense of the constitution. Because remember, Armenians had risen up because they were like, dude, there's a fucking counter-revolution going on.
Right.
In the end, both Turkish and Armenians were arrested. A French missionary told what happened next. 6 of the Armenians were hanged in Adana by order of the court-martial, together with 9 Muslims for provoking the massacre. Thus, the court-martial largely adopted the version of events put forward by Adana authorities, who wanted to pin the blame for the catastrophe on the Armenians. The director of Adana's Turkish newspaper, Itidal, who personally participated in the massacre and since then has published dangerously slanderous articles against the Armenians, has not been disturbed in any way and is pursuing his campaign. So everyone takes a step back, right? And I was like, oh my God, that was so bad. 18,000 dead is crazy. We're not going to do that anymore.
They've already been doing it so much, though.
No, that's not what happens. So
they're just going to keep doing it.
They're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Addicted to killing Armenians at this point. It's crazy.
So Young Turk rule in response to both foreign hostility and domestic instability becomes increasingly autarkic, I guess is the way to put it. Like, they're just like, we are a single party state now. Like, fuck the liberals, fuck all of that. We're just us. Talat, who was, remember, the telegraph clerk, took over as Minister of the Interior. And initially, many Armenians in the Dashnak party welcomed his appointment and continued to work with the CUP. In August of 1909, the Dashnak signed an agreement with the CUP to defend the constitution and to, quote, preserve the sacred Ottoman fatherland from separation and division. The Hanchaks also agreed to work within the framework of the law to advocate for Armenians. But remember, we do kind of want our own thing eventually. Hey, Maddie, what happened in Russia in 1905?
In 1905?
First revolution.
Oh, 1905.
There was a 1905. It didn't go anywhere, but there was a whole fucking revolution.
5. Okay, I kind of thought it was later. I kind of thought it would have been closer to 1917.
So after the failure,
it's early.
There's like the 1910 one, which everyone knows about. Yeah. But there's like a kind of an attempt at getting something going in 1905 that kind of goes nowhere.
All right. I definitely was thinking.
But Nicholas II, remember how at first Nicholas had been like, I love the Armenians. Oh my God, you guys can have your own schools. Like, a lot of the political parties, like the Dashnaks and the Hanchaks, formed in Russian Armenia, not in the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
And even his Minister of the Interior was Armenian, and he was like, this rocks, this is so cool. But at a certain point, Nicholas is also dealing with sort of like peripheral struggles, I guess you would call it, like Georgian Muslims, Ukrainian independence movements. Like, everyone's kind of going wild. And so he's like, I don't love the Armenians, who tend to be participating in a lot of these revolutionary groups in Russia. So he rounds up 500 Armenians and tries them and puts them in like prison.
Okay.
Right. So the British are, in spite of Gladstone's and of Disraeli's sort of outbursts in the 1890s in favor of the Armenians, basically taking this hands-off policy. There's this brief respite from land seizures that immediately follows the revolution or the coup, but they start beginning again, and the Armenian National Assembly establishes a commission for usurped lands, which looks at 135 reports of land seizures, either by Turkic officials or by Kurds in the eastern part of the Anatolia province. They find 7,000 cases, and their general conclusion is like, here's the problem. When we try to take these cases to court, what that does is it exposes Armenians to violence, right? Like, so we can't really, like, we have no recourse. At the same time, Greece starts asserting control over the island of Crete, which was at the time contested, leading to anti-Greek and more generally anti-Christian sentiment. In 1911, when Hanchak activist Stepano Osapan Gulian visits Anatolia, he found that all of the CUP clubs, which were supposed to be open to everyone of all ethnicities, had become exclusively Turkish. Moreover, in CUP schools, members were beginning to identify as Turkish rather than as Ottoman, which is significant.
Like that.
Turkish nationalism begins calling for the establishment of a national millet, essentially a national economy, one which was explicitly Turkish in its control. Right.
Okay.
And remember that a lot of the resentment of Armenians as well as Greeks, less so Assyrians, but Assyrians are more on like the sort of Iraq and at the time Persian border, was that they represented the merchant class.
Yes.
Right. So an Armenian member of parliament, Grigor Zorap, proclaimed before parliament that the constitution had become an empty shell. When new elections were held in 1912, the Dashnaks again signed a coalition agreement with the CUP. At this point, you gotta wonder.
I mean, I think it has so few options.
Yeah.
They're really like between a rock and a hard place. Like they don't have any allies. They're not politically strong enough on their own.
Yeah. But I guess it's like,
You think try something new?
well, it's just like, I guess it's like do this or be massacred, but yeah.
Right. They really are in a bad position here.
The Hanchaks, meanwhile, sided with the liberal Italif party, which was made up of like the remnants of the old liberal wing. The campaign between the liberal Italif and the CUP revolved around the CUP's commitment to centralization and bureaucratic control, something you love.
I do love centralizing things and giving them bureaucracy. So true.
You would have been CUP and
would I have survived?
Well, I mean, let's take for granted that you're not Armenian, Greek, Assyrian, or in some instances Kurdish. It's like you would have been like.
Would I have been the genocider?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the genocider.
Italif, meanwhile, advocated for decentralization and localization of authority, essentially advocating for education in local language and ceding power to local authorities in a lot of instances. Essentially, what they wanted to go back to was the Tanzimat system, right? Like the Malay system in which sort of ethno-religious groups had local autonomy, but, paid taxes to the central government.
Right.
As Hassan,
actually, we will see is kind of what ended up happening in the USSR later.
Yeah.
Armenians. Yeah. Interesting.
Whenever I have had occasion to talk to Armenians from Armenia who are old enough to remember as adults living in Armenia under the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Good things. They're like, I like this.
Well,
that was good.
And I mean, I think Armenians today still have a good feeling about Russia. A lot of them.
Yeah. So, as
not super lately.
Yeah. I mean,
we'll talk about it. I think that'll be our bonus episode.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, as Hassan Kayali writes, the CUP was particularly vulnerable to charges of Turkification. Its main cadres consisted of Turkish speakers, and that contributed to the perception of a centralizing policy of Turkification. Furthermore, consistent with the constitutional stipulation, the CUP-dominated government declared in 1912 its intention to apply the requirement of Turkish language proficiency more strictly for prospective deputies, presumably in the expectation of blocking a group of minority candidates who followed the Entente, the Italif party. In the end, the Unionists pulled out a stunning 95% majority in the parliament. How do you think?
It does get worse.
It's like, this is totally above board. No election fraud happened.
Yeah.
95% majorities in parliamentary elections are common. As Kayali puts it, in fact, the CUP's determination to hold power through, quote, means legal and illegal. In fact, what happened was that the CUP used a campaign of intimidation, violence, and bribery in order to win the election. Okay, Madeline, you gotta help me out here. There we go.
Gumilcinelli?
There we go.
No, that's too Italian.
We're going with it. He's Italian now.
He's Italian.
Ismail.
Gumilcinelli.
A member of the opposition was coincidentally drafted into the army ahead of the election so he can run.
I mean, that's actually a really creative use of power. Who's your guy running? Actually, he's drafted.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Okay, I didn't know that was an option. That's kind of smart.
And
an evil. That's evil.
The poet Riza Tafik was jailed for failing to notify the authorities of a speech he was giving in Istanbul. One liberal candidate, Lutfi Fikri, who was running for office in the East, arrived in his hometown to discover that they had decided to hold the elections early and that his name had coincidentally been left off the ballot.
What? That happens sometimes. Clerical error.
Kiley makes the point that with ethnic minorities, as the sort of Entente or Tilleve was popular with ethnic minorities and intellectuals in urban centers. However, the majority of the population, especially in rural areas, did in fact support the CUP. So here's the thing. They did election fraud. They might not have needed to, but they
might have got 55%. But with the election fraud, they really got it up to 95.
But it is also a parliamentary system, which means that they get all the candidates.
Right.
Right. Which means that they can essentially, I think there are like 5 candidates who end up being from Italy, but it's like.
Right.
So
super majority.
Italy refuses to concede. In the meantime, there's another military mutiny because they still haven't been paid.
That's right.
Which forced the whole of the CUP cabinet to resign en masse and dismiss parliament.
Wait, what? All that for nothing? Then?
Yeah.
They just had to resign.
Well, they're going to come back almost immediately.
Okay.
At this point, executive power definitively replaces parliament. So essentially the parliament resigns and it's just an executive cabinet.
Okay.
That is running the country.
So it was like 5 dudes.
3.
3 dudes? Wow, okay.
And the liberal wing under Sabahaddin, remember this is the Sultan's nephew, get just like they're completely. He begins appointing a cabinet. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, he does come to power briefly. He's gone quickly. So he appoints like Armenians, such as Gabriel Madel. Please help me out.
Oh, but I'm worse at names than you. Nuradungian.
There we go.
Nuradungian. That sounds like a name. Yeah, Nuradungian.
Yeah. Who served as foreign minister, and he attempts to handle corruption and violence against the ethnic minorities in the east by appointing new governors in Van and Bitlis, which, remember, these are like the predominantly Armenian towns. One clerk in the British Foreign Office wrote, "No previous government has ever shown such good intention as regards Armenia." So this brief respite, which I completely forgot about, is this is the conflict of the story. So everything goes haywire. After Austro-Hungary annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria declares independence and Crete officially becomes a part of Greece. In the Balkans, 2/3 of the 6 million people identified as Christian. In October of 1912, Montenegro, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Greece formed an alliance and began a brief war. This is the First Balkan War, which establishes Albania as an independent state. It's worth noting the war engendered atrocities on all sides. Bulgarian and Greek Christians massacred Muslim civilians and burned their towns, and Ottoman soldiers did the same thing. Armenians fought on all sides of the conflict. The principal effect of the war was the displacement of millions of Muslims from the Balkans into Anatolia, which is going to go great for Armenians living in Anatolia. They also arrive in Anatolia with stories of the atrocities they experienced against or by Bulgarians and Greeks, and began calling for revenge against Christians within the Ottoman Empire. Among the CUP leadership, which had been driven underground, this led to renewed interest in Turkish nationalism. Ömer Seyfettin, who was like a kind of like poet, writer, nationalist guy, he had participated in the war and had been a prisoner in the Balkans, began publishing salacious stories of rape and murder committed by Bulgarian Christians. Dr. Nazim, who was one of the original CUP members, told the British consul that the nation was filled with the sentiment of hatred.
I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah. They all fucking hate each other. Everybody hates each other.
The upshot of all of this is that any kind of cosmopolitanism is basically lost. And basically, over the course of the 19th and 20th century, the Ottoman Empire, or as it's falling apart, the remaining Turks turned to Anatolia as the site of a kind of ethnic Turkish state. Like, they're like, we got to have a state at this point.
Okay.
And Anatolia is going to be where it is. And that includes the eastern portion, which is predominantly where Armenians live.
Okay. All right.
Turkey for the Turks. A liberal Ottomanist journal in France quoted Dr. Nazim as follows: "The pretensions of the various nationalities are a capital source of annoyance for us. We hold linguistic, historic, and ethnic aspirations in abhorrence. This and that group will have to disappear. There should only be one nation on our soil, the Ottoman nation, and only one language, Turkish."
Okay, so he's basically, this person's just like, genocide, we love it, we're going to do it, Build an ethno-state. Fuck all y'all, die.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So at this point, Enver Bey, who had been one of the original CUP members, along with Talat Bey, the clerk, raided the Sublime Porte and forced the vizier to resign at gunpoint. They killed the Minister of War and a few others. The Balkan War hadn't even been concluded, but the new reactionary government, which remember, so they are raiding the capital essentially in order to execute the Balkan War properly, right? Like they are like, you guys are fucking it up. We're losing Albania. We're losing Bulgaria. What the fuck? So they immediately have to admit defeat. A year later, when squabbles start to erupt among the victorious powers, essentially between Greece and Albania, Enver was able to proudly march into the captured town of Edirne and declare himself Edirne, and declare himself the second conqueror of Edirne. The first was Murad I in the 14th century. So at this point, the CUP comes back. The liberals got like less than a year. And they control the entirety of the Ottoman government, and their most reactionary members, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Samal Pasha, become the sort of central administration of the government, like the cabinet of the government. Among the goals of the new government was the modernization of the military, an issue which had been and the issue of the lingering problem of ethnic minorities within the state.
Always a problem. You got to get rid of those ethnic minorities. Yeah. Am I right, David?
This
is thing you do. You come to power. You're like, oh no, what are my problems? Not the debt. Not the chaos. Not the fighting.
Dude, what if I came out of doing the research from this and became like Turkish nationalist?
You're not even Turkish. You're not even Turkish.
Listen, Pan-Turkism
includes David out here in Los Angeles.
No, that one hopes that our listeners have a sense of irony and understand that this is
a bit. It is absolutely wild though to be like, the biggest problem we have going on in a country full of so many problems is the issue of ethnic minorities existing.
I mean, this is a problem. Like, I don't know.
But I guess the ethnic minorities are the scapegoat for all the problems.
That's
how it goes, right? That's how it goes in the United States. That's how it goes everywhere.
Yeah, and I think like the thing to understand, like, about sort of, or this is Hobsbawm's point about the sort of rise of nationalism, is that prior to sort of Wilsonian nationalism, which is the idea that like if you have two people who speak a language, that's a state. This is like the post World War I kind of shit. The principal idea or like ideology was that some nations would be subsumed under others, and like some languages would just be lost organically. And so like they are kind of operating on a principle that was like a common held belief among like nationalists in the 19th and early 20th century.
Right.
So yeah, a new government. So Otto Lehmann von Sanders, he comes in, he's like a German naval general. He comes in to modernize the army. Additionally, they began plans to forcefully locate the nearly 1 million Greeks from the Aegean coast. In May to June of 1914, 150,000 Greeks were forcibly removed to Greece. So,
all right. So that takes care of one of the ethnic minorities.
A little campaign of ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. In the coming years, tens of thousands more were displaced, mostly to the interior. And this was, especially after World War I started, they were like, this is for security reasons. We don't want them on the borders. At the same time, there start to be Kurdish rebellions, and you got to feel bad for the Kurds, right? Because like the Kurdish people had been traditionally sort of nomadic people living within the Ottoman Empire, who the Ottoman state had used as a cudgel every now and again to fight other ethnic minorities within the state, right? But at a certain point, the Kurds are like, we are also not Turkish. What the fuck? And like the second that it's like Turkish nationalism as a sort of source of national identity becomes the thing, the Kurds suddenly find themselves on the outs. Right?
Right. Yeah.
So they start their own uprisings all over the east, one in Lake Van, another near Erbilis, and another on the Iraqi border. When the rebellions were put down in May of 1914, 12 Turkish leaders were executed. The CUP government at this point turned to Armenians, who had, suffered for decades or kind of like more than a century at the hands of local Turkish officials in order to sort of administer justice. It's bad. So the British consul wrote that no stable state of security can be looked for until a Kurd who has killed an Armenian is looked upon and dealt with as a murderer and not merely a man who has simply killed an.
Oh, yeah. The dehumanization.
Yeah. At the conclusion of the Balkan War, frustrated with the Young Turk movement, Armenians began organizing efforts to have their case heard about Eastern Anatolia. And at this point, Russian Armenians in the Armenian National Assembly are beginning to advocate for international solutions, right? Like they're saying, like, we need
to help.
We need independent, what was it George W. Bush asked for? Independent inspectors. Yeah. But no, they are like they want
federal negotiations.
They want the UN.
Yeah, they want the UN. Yeah.
And you can like if you are the Armenians, you can kind of get like.
Yeah. You're like, holy shit, our people are getting fucked with.
So as far as the European powers are concerned, the Ottoman state needed to survive, again, the debt stuff. And also there's the idea, because at this point they're doing like the great game kind of bullshit that like made World War I happen, where they're like, everything has to be even. Russia has to have exactly the same amount of power in the world as Britain, as France. And if anyone gets a little more power, it'll fuck up the whole system. Right. Mm-hmm. So if the Ottoman state becomes dismembered, that fucks up the balance of power. Abdul Hamid had borrowed heavily from Europe, and as I said, in order for that debt to be administered, the state had to survive. European ships appeared off the coast of Istanbul. By the way, I just have to say, when I looked it up, Constantinople becomes Istanbul in like 1930, and a lot of like officially, but in a lot of the literature, they start referring to Constantinople as Istanbul, starting in like right prior to World War I. And so I'm just going to use both interchangeably until official. Yeah. So this pisses off. Oh, so this becomes like they hold a conference. They threaten to occupy territory in order to administer reforms for the Armenian question. In order to preempt any attempts by Europe to use the Armenian question to impose authority from outside, the CUP requests British inspectors to be sent to the region. Britain says, like, we're not going to do it alone. That's fucked up. And so they end up acting in concert. And by 1913, Russia had sent inspectors to Anatolia to supervise reforms. This pisses off the Turkish nationalists who regard Anatolia as the Turkish homeland. And the CUP almost immediately changes course in response to nationalist anger. On its face, their objection was to having a multinational group of inspectors. They're like, listen, we asked for the British and you sent the Russians. What the fuck? But instead of the invited British, it's really about foreign intervention.
At all. Just like, why is anybody coming here to check out what we're doing?
In February of 1914, an agreement is signed, and the Russian consul wrote from Istanbul that the act of February 8th, 1914 marks without a doubt the dawn of a new and happier era in the history. The number of times that some consul will write home and be like, we got it.
And it's like, you do not
got it.
It's about to get so bad, you don't even know.
So one of the people who accompanied the inspectors was Armen Garo, who, remember the Ottoman bank seizure right? Armen Garo was like the guy, like the hero of that.
Okay.
And obviously the Turkish nationalists are like, fuck no. You mean a guy who performed like a heist/siege of the Ottoman bank is now going to accompany inspectors to Armenia?
Not exactly trustworthy.
Well, but I think he's trustworthy. I think he's fucking great. So Talat, who remembers Minister of the Interior, the former telegraph guy, refused his participation, and in response, Garo accused Talat of attempting to, quote, assimilate the Kurds and empty Armenia of Armenians. So essentially, You're going to make Kurds into Turks and then kill all the Armenians.
Right.
So the inspectors wound up proposing a reform plan that would grant greater autonomy to the Armenian region, but something happened in 1914. What happened on June 28th? This is
Do I remember this from AP European history?
I will give you a hint. One of the worst bands of the early 2000s is named after this.
This is not the worst band of the early 2000s.
One of the worst bands of the early 2000s.
No.
They are horrible.
What is their hit again? It's Franz Ferdinand.
Franz Ferdinand.
It's the assassination of Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Which officially launched World War I.
Well, it gets launched like 3 weeks later.
Well, that's how we learned it in European history in high school, and I will never forget it. But what was the Franz Ferdinand hit song?
I don't even remember.
You say you don't know.
I
say, take me out. I feel like that's it.
I don't like dance punk. Like, it's like...
I'm looking it up right now.
Here's the thing. Commit to being disco or don't.
No, I think it's great.
Either be... I
got it. It was Take Me Out. That was the song. Yes. 2001. We were in high school learning about...
Yes.
In AP European history, learning about World War I, listening to the band Franz Ferdinand Take Me Out.
Just be the Salsoul Orchestra or Love Unlimited. Be disco.
Okay. Now, I stand by the dance punk craze of the early 2000s. I support it. I endorse it. I would like to see more of it.
I will also say, I hold dance punk specifically solely responsible for the reintroduction of cocaine into punk stuff.
I think that's probably true. I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
And I think that is bad.
Okay, you want to moralize about cocaine use, we can have this conversation.
No, I was taught
I'm just saying, I consumed a lot of dance punk, not a lot of cocaine. So
I was taught as a
choice at that point.
As a young punk listening type person, that it was not punk to do cocaine. And then all of a sudden the rules changed.
Okay. David's number one concern with band. Okay, anyway, so the guy Franz Ferdinand, not the band with the hit single "Take Me Out,"
though
stated perfectly, I might add, with my singing voice.
Though the world might have been much better had an Albanian revolutionary tried to kill the band Franz Ferdinand.
Oh my God! Sorry. You and your anti-dance punk. David hates fun.
No,
David hates fun.
I am an advocate for disco. I just like disco. Okay. We started this by reading the letter that's sent every year by Turkey to the Patriarch of the Armenian Church. Can you kind of sum up what that said?
I remember it was some fuck ass shit, wasn't it? It was like, I'm so happy we work together and love each other. Nothing bad's ever happened between us.
Well, so it's kind of like, oh man, it really sucks that some Armenians died as a part of the war effort, as did Turks. Everyone died.
That's what it was.
It was World War I that did it. That's
what it was. It wasn't that shit's great for both of us. It was like we both suffered.
Yeah.
Am I right?
So at this point, Russia, by the way, Russia's limping along here. They're like...
Yeah, they're not doing so great. Tsarist Russia's not really thriving.
There's a good, here's a good reason to read Proust. There is a part that I'd forgotten about in Proust where Marcel, the narrator, author guy of that, is like advising a friend of his on buying Russian bonds, because there was a run on Russian bonds on the French stock exchange, because it was like Russia was the most indebted state in the world. They're not doing well.
Yeah.
So they're hoping that the Armenian agitation in Anatolia weakens its rival. By the outbreak of the war, Tsar Nicholas II had 500 Armenians rounded up and tried for treason, which we mentioned. But like the reason I bring up the sort of like Turkish explanation for what happened is like, I would like you to judge from what we start talking about right now what you think happened. Okay.
So
The Ottomans joined the war. They fought on 9 fronts. Nearly 800,000 Ottomans died in the war. I just want to give so this is mostly by disease. Nearly 25% of conscripts died during the war. At the outbreak of the war, the CUP government set its sights on the Aegean island of Chios, Mytilene, and Limnos. Hi, Fork.
Fork just waddled in to join us.
Close to the shores of Anatolia, which had been lost in the Balkan War. At the same time, Greeks living along the coast, especially in the port city of Smyrna, were removed from their home. Talat, the minister of the war, saw Greeks as essentially foreign agents instead of using the state military to expel the Greeks. He started these special organizations of essentially paramilitary groups. Which is super cool. So
that's not great.
He encouraged irregular militias to be formed with the secret backing of the state. So essentially what happened...
So you just go pretend to be a vigilante, but we'll actually back you and then just go round up and kill Greek people?
Kill and displace.
But it's we're just using the war as a cover to do the thing I wanted to do all along, which is get rid of Greek people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they set about expelling Greeks from their homes. In Foka on June 12th, a militia entered the town and killed about 50 people. More attacks were carried out in Sarakoi, all while Talat was able to deny to the Greek government that was happening and was in fact signing treaties with Greece at the time.
I don't know those guys. Who are they?
The militia... Oh, there we go. Romania, and over the course of the war, more than 100,000 Greeks were forcibly deported, usually to the interior of the state. After the Ottomans officially entered the war, they kind of they pussyfooted around about it for a few months, and they're we're neutral, what the fuck, while signing a secret treaty with Germany.
Okay.
At the same time, Talat began ordering governors to prepare for war, writing that whatever steps and measures are necessary for war and an attack on us must be carried out right now. At the time, there were actually secret negotiations going on with Russia. The Russians wanted reforms that had been proposed before the war broke out to be implemented. And the CUP wanted assurances that Russia would not act in favor of Armenians. By the end of the discussion, Talat declared that the only guide to action should be cold-blooded policy. Russia is our greatest enemy, and we are afraid of her. If now, while Germany is attacking Russia, we can give her a good strong kick and so make her powerless to injure us for some time, it is Turkey's duty to administer that kick. Meanwhile, Germany is kind of pissed that the Ottomans are delaying so much. The German naval admiral Edward von Kappel told an Ottoman military attaché that Turkey has a future in the Caucasus and its surrounding. If we are successful, these regions will be yours. So essentially, remember all the shit you lost?
Yeah.
You're going to get it back.
Okay.
So in February, Enver takes over as Minister of War and begins purging the military of unreliables, i.e. ethnic minorities.
Yeah.
Talat, meanwhile, takes over as Minister of the Interior and begins organizing the special organizations, these paramilitary groups, under the direct supervision of the CUP, but secretly, made up often of criminals. So they let a bunch of people out of jail, who are often murderers and stuff, and they're join our paramilitary group.
Right. I mean, that's who you...
Yeah. As Sunni puts it, referred to as setes, gangs, or guerrillas, these specially recruited fighters were available to young Turks independently of the regular army and could be used for action against designated civilians. After the looting of Armenian shops in Diyarbakir, a member of a paramilitary group told the British consul, if the Armenians insisted on their foolish game, they would ultimately pay a high price for it. Russia, France, and Great Britain cannot help them and cannot and will not be able to save them. In Van, the local governor sent back reports that the Armenians were in fact loyal, writing that no one had ever immigrated to Russia or Persia from Armenia. They were we are loyal, stop fucking with us. However, the consensus view was that the Armenians wanted Russia to win so that reforms could be carried out. There were, in fact, a few defections, including Armand Garo, who was I just got in an argument with the Minister of the Interior. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Right.
Which confirmed to the Young Turks that the Armenians could not be trusted. Tarat, as Minister of the Interior, it was confirmed in his view that the enemies of the state must, in the interest of wartime security, be rounded up and dispersed or exterminated.
Wow.
Since the liberal opposition had been all but eliminated, Tarat turned first to the Hanchuk Party. On July 16th of 1914, 20 party leaders were arrested, followed by 100 more members. The Dashnuks, meanwhile, convened a conference at the beginning of August. 2 delegates from the special organization met with them, so this is the paramilitary group.
Yeah.
And proposed joint action to stir up Russian Armenian agitators across the border.
Like to stir them up to like come intervene?
No, to like fight against Tsarist Russia.
Okay, got it.
So they were like, hey man, and the Dashnuk Party refused, basically on like, they were like,
I was gonna say, this doesn't sound like something Shucks would be into.
And they're basically like, any hope that we have of having reforms happen has to do with us remaining neutral on this. Like, we can't do crazy ass paramilitary shit. We're not going to.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that they would be involved in that. That's why I was like, what?
So they did affirm their willingness to join the military and even offered to pay a separate special tax to fund the military. One of the special organization officials reported back, the Armenians are not inclined to collaborate with us. See to it that our orientation is kept secret from them. Talat responded by having leaders of the local Armenian political parties tailed and surveilled. Grigor Zorap, meanwhile, the erstwhile Armenian member of the CUP, told a friend, you can be sure they're going to do something to us. So the French were kind of trying to convince the Dashnaks to aid the Allied powers, the Entente. Talat at the same time had all of the Armenian police dismissed, and new laws were passed to requisition supplies for the mobilization of the military. In practice, what this meant was the mass looting of Armenian and Greek businesses.
Wow.
One Armenian missionary traveling through Anatolia remarked, at every village where I stopped, I found homes desolate and suffering was beginning to be keen because the breadwinners had gone to the front. So at this point, hardship is still general. Like Turks are feeling it. Armenians are feeling it. The Ottoman Empire is, at this point, essentially bankrupt, though, and was having a hard time financing, even paying their officers. By the end of the war, between 300,000 to 500,000 Ottoman soldiers deserted. And because the infrastructure was so poor, soldiers were often forced to make hundreds of miles of marches within the Ottoman Empire to get to the front lines on foot.
Wow.
So they're not doing well. Additionally, the famine decimated parts of Syria in 1914. I gotta say, okay, so Madeline, you're the CUP.
Okay.
It's 1914.
Okay.
You're not in the war yet. Let's just assume, like, Franz Ferdinand, dead. But you haven't signed your secret treaty with Germany yet. You're just like,
I'm neutral. I don't know.
And you're like,
I don't have resources for a war. Do I know that?
Yes, you very much. You are the ruling party.
I just want to make sure I'm not delusional. I don't know.
Like,
I know I don't have resources for war. My shit's all fucked.
Like, it seems like the thing to do would just be like, I don't know, you guys fucking fight. And like,
stay out of it.
Like, this is the thing, and remember that the CUP had been a bunch of like immigrant intellectuals living in Paris who had like formed kind of the right wing of the Young Turk movement before they took power. None of them had actually been leader. Like, none of them knew what the fuck they were doing. They were just some guys.
Right.
And like, you kind of like, for a lot of this, you get that feeling where it's like yakety sax starts playing in the background, right? Like, it's where it's like, you guys are going to do murderous, fucked up things and kill up to around 1.5 million people
because you have no clue what's going on.
And like, your only recourse is like Turkish nationalism in order to.
Nationalism is not the ideology. It's politically developed mind.
Yeah. So 2 days after, so they form a secret treaty with Germany, and then kind of at Germany's behest, they attack Sevastopol on the Black Sea with Germany. right? So 2 days after that attack, Tsar Nicholas issues a pronouncement to his subjects, and he puts it in very, like, Christian, whatever fucking language. It is with complete serenity and the assistance of God that Russia takes on the appearance of this new enemy, this ancient oppressor of the Christian faith and all Slavic nations. Together with all Russian nations, we believe without fail that Turkey's reckless intervention in the present conflict will only accelerate her submission to her fate and open up Russia's path towards the realization of its historic task of her ancestors along the shores of the Black Sea. You gotta, that, like, tough talk from a guy who's about to die in, like, what, 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know that, though.
yeah. Almost immediately, he's able to call up 150,000 reservists who go to the Caucasus. This became the longest front in the Ottoman war effort, some 280 miles of front, which was difficult to supply because also they didn't have trains, and it was mountainous. So for the young Turk government, the Caucasus was also kind of the prize because that was the region that had been lost in the Turkish war. They set up councils, especially around Erzurum, near the border of eastern Anatolia, and began to remove the non-Muslim population from the border regions. Talat declared that those non-Muslim individuals who cross the border without a passport in hand are to be arrested, and those found to be attempting to bring across the border weapons are to be summarily executed. So there's a mini genocide that happens within the big genocide.
Okay.
So that is the murder of Assyrians, which starts now.
All right.
So this hardens pre-existing ethnic religious lines. When Assyrians on the border with Iran refused conscriptions, the Ministry of the Interior requisitioned their property and set fire to their villages. On October 26, 3 days before the declaration of war, Talat ordered the deportation of Assyrians in a mass campaign of ethnic cleansing in which thousands died while being cool, right?
Oh, God, it's horrible.
So as war intensified along the Ottoman, Iranian, Russian border in the region of the Caucasus, Russians initially pulled back, leaving Armenians to march through winter to the Russian border to seek refuge because they were being mass deported by the Ottoman Empire. By the end of January, nearly 50,000 Armenians and 8,000 Assyrians had crossed the Russian border to escape ethnic cleansing. Meanwhile, news of killings enacted by the special organizations in Erzurum began to filter out. The German consul there reported that 3 Turkish irregulars visited a distinguished priest in the village of Osni on the Erzurum plateau, where they ate and slept. The next morning, they forced him to accompany them to the edge of the village where he was shot to death with a shotgun.
Oh, wow.
He went on to give an explanation for the violence. Quote, the Armenian population maintains that the Turkish party, Ittihad, so the CUP, instigates this movement. It is a matter of fact that the Turkish officers do not see eye to eye with the Armenians and reproach them for being friendly and helping the Russian troops to get into Turkish territory. Even with the Turkish population, as one can see from certain symptoms, the old hatred is rising again. So the Armenian Patriarch in Istanbul, meanwhile, was quick to put down rumors of Armenians deserting, and he put out a circular saying, our people should be exhorted from the church pulpit and on other occasions in writing and orally to fulfill the obligations from the Ottoman fatherland with complete sincerity, just like they have done for centuries.
And I just want to be clear, we're still not at the full genocide yet.
We are leading up to, like,
okay, this is still the
we are what, an hour and a half?
Yeah, we're an hour and a half.
Okay, so we're going to get to the end of this section, the big instigating thing, which I'm going to say was an unforced error. And, okay. And then...
And we'll finish it up next
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the CUP still wanted Armenians to instigate rebellions among their Russian counterparts, which the Dashnag continued to refuse. Right. So, at this point, we have to talk about the term jihad for just a second. Okay. So the CUP issues a memorandum being like, that essentially is characterizing the Ottoman conflict as jihad, right? And they are saying this is a holy. What's actually happening is they are trying to fight against Britain, France, and Russia, by mobilizing the large Arab and Kurdish as well as Turkic population and trying to find some common cause around which they can all unite, because they are this multi-ethnic state in which a lot of the ethnic minorities or the ethnic groups who are out of political power have been persecuted, often for centuries. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the call to jihad by ACUP was in some sense a tactical move to bring together all these ethnically distinct Muslim subjects towards the war effort. So the first major defeat of the war, which this is the one that has major repercussions for the Armenians, happened at Sarakamis in the Caucasus. Enver Pasha, who's the Minister of War, attempts to reproduce the German victory against the Russians at Tannenberg. So remember, the Germans in Tannenberg, we didn't talk about this here, but I feel like if you watch a lot of History Channel documentaries, you know about this. The Germans surround Tannenberg and essentially create a siege and defeat the Russians.
Okay.
So they want to encircle the Russian military headquarters at Sarakamis. The Ottomans are not the Germans. However, they are bankrupt. They do not have good supply chains, yada, yada, yada. So
they should have stayed out of it.
They should have just stayed out of the whole fucking thing.
They didn't need to be involved in this whole thing.
This is happening in the midst of winter with a poorly equipped army, prevented by building railway lines by the Russians, who keep attacking them while they're building the railway lines, which not the worst strategy.
I mean, a pretty good strategy.
So they had a 700-mile supply line. One letter from a soldier to his home read, "We go days without eating. We are cold and wear thin clothes." Enver personally led the way, and the Ottoman Empire, or the Ottoman army, was forced to march through Anatolia in winter, with thousands freezing to death before they even got to the siege thing that they were doing.
God, worst war ever.
In the attack that followed, 45,000 Ottomans died, as opposed to about 28,000 Russians who were killed or wounded. By the end of the Sarakamis operation, some 90,000 Ottomans were dead.
Didn't they only have 800,000 people total?
Yeah.
That's like an eighth of their fucking entire army.
Yeah, they're not doing
great. There's a reason why we don't have an Ottoman Empire anymore, I guess.
This is it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the Enver Pasha. So there's a great article in like a Turkish daily newspaper where it's like why no one is named Enver anymore. Which it was like, this guy was a fucking moron, right? Like he, in the history telling since then, Enver Pasha is regarded as like having personally, which I think is fair, having personally caused a catastrophe that killed 90,000 Ottomans.
Ugh. Well, I guess if I'm having a bad day, at least I haven't done that.
Yeah. So he comes back to Istanbul and immediately is like, "What defeat? What are you talking about? We didn't do that. I don't know." But news leaks out nonetheless. Like he officially is like, "We don't talk about what happened at Sarakamis." What the fuck are you talking about?
It's his Vegas.
His Vegas?
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
You don't talk about the time you accidentally killed 90,000 people.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Vegas shooting.
No, what the fuck?
Like,
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Okay.
It's their marketing tagline. Jesus,
I don't know.
I was
so when it does come out, he's like, the Armenians did it.
Okay. Well, scapegoat. That's what you do with the ethnic minorities. Scapegoat.
So in retaliation, Enver took 200 Russian quote unquote.
Yeah.
Right. Armenians captive and had 30 more hanged before the Istanbul gate in Erzurum. On February 25th, the Ministry of War released Directive 8682, which demobilized all Armenians in the army and moved them into forced labor battalions.
Oh.
Also contained within the directive was an accusation, false, again, remember what the Patriarch said, that the Patriarch had been, the Patriarch of the Armenian Church had been transmitting military secrets to Russia. There is no evidence for this. Right. After the defeat by the British at Suez and Gallipoli, Talat ordered the removal of Armenians from the area around Dortiol and Adana. Talat began ordering the further deportation of Armenians, and actions that were to be taken extremely forcefully, this is a quote, and speedily in those areas where Armenian operations and activities have increased. An Armenian priest in Istanbul Gregorius Balakian recounted the following story, and I think this is where we'll end. Quote, a high-ranking Turkish official in Adana had a close relationship with a wealthy Armenian who held an official position in that city and enjoyed respect and influence in local European circles. One day, in the beginning of February 1915, the former invited the later to meet with him and said to him in confidence, a new storm is about to break upon the Armenians, so I hope you will save yourself. The horrified Armenian merchant asked, what can I do to save myself? The Turkish official answered tersely, go to Mezreen, get on a steamship, and escape to Europe. Do not waste time by saying, let me save my wealth. Believe me, later you will be sorry.
Wow.
Okay, so we're a little over an hour and a half at this point.
Yeah, no, I think this is
Okay.
good. So our new format we're working on for all of you guys, this is the wrapping up the end of this episode, is I think we're going to start to do hour and a half-ish long regular episodes and then back to the 30 minutes of supplementary material per episode.
And so Madeline over on Patreon is going to be telling us about the Armenian ethnic cleansing in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So hopefully we can do this every episode and you get more Patreon content for our Patreon subscribers. So if you want to learn more about what we're going to be talking about to follow up this episode, you can join us at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. It is $3 a month and you get access to bonus content. And the follow-up to this is going to be basically these conditions that we're seeing here, how they play into the current day situation going on with Armenians in Azerbaijan, which is very, very relevant to everything David just talked about. That's going to be on Patreon. But next week, back over here on our main episode, we will be getting into part 3.
And this is, I think, the conclusion.
Of the Armenian genocide. So thanks, everybody, for sticking around here. And we'll be back next week.
All right. How long was that?